Welcome to the Transform Your Wedding podcast, a how-to guide for taking your wedding to a whole new level. Here's your host, Marie Kubin from Rent My Wedding.
Hey guys, thanks for checking out the very first episode of the podcast. In this episode, I'll tell you about my background and how I got started in the wedding industry. I'll share some stories like how I started a nationwide rental company out of my apartment and how I used to ride the bus to deliver packages. So I hope you guys enjoy it. Here we go. So I kind of stumbled into the wedding industry. Back in 2011, I was planning my own wedding. And at the time, I was living in Maryland, going to law school, but my wedding was going to be in Wisconsin, back in my hometown. So I started contacting vendors and planning, and it was really difficult because at that time, no one had prices on their websites. They really didn't even want to tell you pricing by phone. They wanted to meet in person for everything. So that was a huge challenge, obviously, being halfway across the country. And I remember thinking at the time, wow, this could be so much easier. Why can't I just find everything online? And it would even be better if I could just get everything all on one website and just check out like Amazon.com, but for weddings. Well, I kind of tucked that into the back of my head. And just when I thought that I was done planning my wedding, I came across a photo, of course, on Pinterest, and it was beautiful. It had this glow of color, and the couple's names were on the dance floor, and I just had to have that look. So I started calling lighting vendors to get pricing, but I found out it was going to cost thousands of dollars. Thousands just for the lighting. Now, I was planning a wedding on a budget, so there's just no way that I was going to fit in thousands of dollars for lighting. So I was really disappointed, but I had to have the lighting. So I tried to find a way, and I figured, well, maybe I can just set it up myself. So I started doing some research to try to figure out what lighting to use. Eventually, I found the manufacturers for professional quality lights, and the sticker is that it was going to cost thousands just to buy the lighting. So it was really a tough choice, but I figured maybe I can resell it when I'm done, or maybe I can kind of loan it out to people and they could rent it from me, and then we can just split the costs. So I figured I'd buy the lighting and then try to make my money back on it. So I did, and I was so excited when the lights arrived. I couldn't wait to play with them, but I started pressing a few buttons and they didn't do anything. I couldn't figure it out. So I started doing a Google search to see if I could find some instructions or a YouTube video, but there was nothing. At that time, the only people doing lighting were DJs and lighting companies, and of course, they're not going to share their secrets. So I pulled out the manual from the manufacturer, and I started following those instructions, but it was telling me to daisy chain the lights and program them to master slave mode. And I had no clue. It was like reading a different language. So I just started playing around with the lights myself. And after a lot of trial and error, I finally figured out how to make them do what I needed them to do. And so I wrote it down. I wrote it down in plain English. And you wouldn't believe it, but it was actually so easy. Once you had it figured out, you just had to follow a couple of steps. It's like plug it in, press a couple of buttons, and boom, you have uplighting. So I was really excited that I had kind of figured this out. So I turned to classified ad websites like weddingbee.com, and I started posting ads. So I told people, hey, I got this lighting. It's professional quality. I can show you how to use it, and you can save tons of money by doing it yourself. Now, I really didn't expect anyone to go for it. It seemed like such a long shot. Who would want to try this on their own? who's going to trust some random girl on a classified ad, right? But surprisingly, I started getting responses. Before I knew it, I was writing up contracts and sending invoices with PayPal. So I shipped out the lights and it worked like magic. They'd follow the instructions and it worked. Their weddings looked amazing. And when they were done, they just sent the lights back to me. Well, the funny thing is that I started getting even more orders than what I had inventory. And this is all happening before my wedding. So I had to order more lights just to keep up with these orders I was getting. So I figured, why not? I'll keep going. So I ordered pallets of lights from the manufacturer and had them delivered to my tiny little apartment. And I still remember unpacking all those lights. They filled my entire apartment. And, I wanted to save all the boxes just in case, I had to return one or whatever. So my apartment was basically a maze. I had boxes everywhere and just these narrow little walkways to get through to the bedroom and the bathroom and out the door. And that's how I lived basically right up until my wedding. So the crazy part is that I had a pretty busy schedule between going to law school and a part-time job. So I would get home late and, have to do some studying, and then I'd get to packing orders. My husband, fiance at the time, he was also very busy with school and training. And so he'd get home late and we would barely hang out other than to pack orders until 2 in the morning. So in the very beginning, it worked out nice, at least because at my apartment building, I had a package room. So I could take all those boxes, drop them off in the package room, and then FedEx would come while I was at school and just get them from the front desk people. So it worked out great. And same thing was with returns. FedEx would drop off all the return packages at my package room, and then I'd go get them when I was back. Well, then I got a call from the apartment manager. It turns out that the front desk team was not too happy with all of my boxes. I guess that normal people get like maybe one package a day and not, 25 or 50. So that was a problem. And pretty soon I was completely banned from the package room. And there was no amount of begging or pleading that could get them to change their minds. Now, this is actually a much bigger deal than you might think because I didn't even have a car. I mean, I had a car, but I had loaned it out to my husband because he didn't have a car and he had way farther to go to school. So typically, I would take the bus to school every day and he'd take my car. So that meant that pretty much the only time that I'd be able to get to FedEx would be on the weekends. Now, the second thing that made this difficult is because I had now started getting even more orders. And in fact, at this point, I had set up a website to streamline everything. So it managed all the orders right online. There was no need to send out contracts or confirm anything. It was all done just with a regular checkout process. So the great thing is that I started getting more orders. The scary thing is that I could get an order placed that morning that had to ship out yet that same day in order to get there in time with FedEx. So, of course, I figured I'd find a way like I always do. So I wasn't going to turn away business. So I would, get those orders in the middle of the day and I'd rush home from school on the bus and I'd pack the order and I'd load up my collapsible dolly cart that I had and I'd wheel it down the hallway and into the elevator and through the lobby, out the door, and over to the bus stop. I'd wait for the bus, and then as it pulled up, I'd get on with everybody staring at me like I was insane because I would get on the bus and set my boxes on the seats. And sometimes I'd take up 2 or 3 seats between myself and the boxes. So that was fun. And I'd take the bus as far as it would go to get me close to the FedEx. And then I would load up my cart again and start trudging uphill a couple blocks over to FedEx. And, just to make it even more fun, it gets pretty hot in Baltimore. I mean, in summer, it was probably 100 degrees and 100% humidity. So it was no small task to get these boxes hauled up to the FedEx. So, anyways, I made it work, and it was just really, really exciting to kind of see how this idea took off, and we were getting busier. But at the same time, it was getting really tough. So, I wasn't sleeping, my fiance wasn't sleeping, and all we do is do orders. And at the same time, I had finished law school now and passed the bar, had a great job as a clerk for an appellate court judge. So I had to make a choice. Was I going to continue down my career path as a lawyer, or was I going to take the plunge and have a business? I just couldn't do both anymore because I was spreading myself too thin. So I asked, of course, for advice from my friends and my family, and you wouldn't imagine the looks that I got. Pretty much everyone just looked at me and said, so you want to know if you should be a lawyer or sell lights on the internet? So you can imagine I sounded pretty ridiculous, but of course, you know what I picked. I chose to rent lights on the internet. And I'm so glad that that's what I picked, because it has been just such an amazing journey to be able to have my own company, see an idea grow, and be my own boss. So I've loved every minute of it. So I took the plunge and I got my first warehouse, which, I'm not going to try to pretend like it was all glamorous when I started my company, because it was literally a tiny little warehouse with 2 employees. And my desk just sat right in the middle of the warehouse next to the shipping lanes, no office, nothing. And I was answering calls on my cell phone, trying to sound like a real company. And the funny thing is, when calls would come in, I'd have to signal to the warehouse guys to stop everything because I can even hear the calls over the screeching of their tape guns. So it was an interesting journey going through all the different phases of growth. And as I started out, I really focused on trying to perfect the rental process. So, of course, having started this all when I was planning my own wedding, I knew how important it was that every rental had to be perfect. It's your wedding. It's one day. There's no do-overs. You can't be late. A refund isn't going to cut it. And there's just no excuse for anything less than perfection when you're helping someone with their wedding. So between that, as well as the fact that I'm a perfectionist, I kind of took things to the extreme, and I mapped out every single step of the rental process. I didn't want to leave anything to chance. And especially now when I was bringing more people on board, so it was now a little bit out of my hands. I had to make sure that I could guarantee that every rental was going to be perfect. So I tackled things like the packaging, just making sure that when we send out an order, no matter what happens in transit, it would arrive in perfect condition. So that was testing out different types of boxes and kind of finding the perfect box and different inside packaging till we could get to the point where FedEx could literally chuck the box at someone's house and everything would still be fine. So the same thing went for things like monitoring packages while they were in transit, setting up an audit system where I could see in real time what's going on with every box. And if there ever is a problem, I know about it before anyone else, sometimes even before FedEx, and I send out a replacement shipment. So that way, on the customer's side, they never even know that there was an issue, and they always get their orders on time. So after kind of, safeguarding every step of the process and getting it all figured out, then I started expanding the products. So I was thinking back to that time when I was planning my wedding, just wanting to have a website where I could order everything and just put everything in my shopping cart and have it all show up at my door. And that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to become a one-stop shop for event rentals. So when I figured out which products to start adding, my focus was looking for things that were either complicated or expensive and making them easy and affordable. So I started with pipe and drape backdrops. Now, that's something that traditionally is done with these really heavy poles and crossbars, and you definitely need full-service professionals to set it up. Sometimes they even bring in lift trucks because this stuff is just so heavy duty. And of course, when you're bringing in all that staff and all that equipment, it gets really pricey. So pipe and drape hasn't always been an option for all budget ranges. And I wanted to change that. So I figured out a way to still create that same look, but using a tripod support system. So you still had the stability with the tripods, but it was really lightweight. You could put it in a box and ship it, and anyone could set it up, no experience required. So that was backdrops. And then I moved on to other things like a photo booth. So again, at the time, you had to bring in this, giant booth that they would set up, and there was an attendant who had to be there all night to run the booth. And again, with all of that labor and, that kind of equipment, it gets really expensive. So I worked with my team to develop the first ever portable photo booth that could fit in a briefcase and anyone could set it up in minutes. And the best part was that it was automated, so it runs itself. You don't need an attendant. You just tap the screen and follow the prompts. So that's been the kind of approach I've taken to everything, just looking for things that I can use for weddings that are either, a big ticket item or something that's really going to make a big difference in a wedding, and finding a way to ship it and make it easy for people. So I'm really proud to say that we've now grown to become the largest online event rental company in the US. We've helped tens of thousands of couples, and we've had about 30 million viewers on Pinterest over the last year, so we've really grown our social media as well. And what I'm most proud of is that recently Wedding Wire recognized us as receiving the most 5-star reviews of any company in the wedding industry. So that's what it's really all about for me, is making people happy and giving them new options and helping them save money and helping them make their wedding look amazing. So that's been such an amazing experience. I've loved every minute of it, and I couldn't be more happy that I decided to take the plunge and jump into the wedding industry. So I couldn't have done it alone, of course. So I can't thank enough my family, who was so supportive during this whole time, as well as my team. I've had some great employees who have really helped grow the company to what it is today. So that's a little bit about my background. And if you want to check out my company, it's rentmywedding.com. And you can find out about all of our do-it-yourself rentals. We do free shipping nationwide. So wherever you're listening from, you can get those rentals delivered for your wedding. It always comes with a 5-day rental period, and we've got 24/7 support. So we're always just a phone call away if you need help setting up your products. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for listening to our very first podcast episode. Be sure to subscribe and leave us a review. I'd really appreciate it. And if you want to get in touch, definitely feel free to email me. It's marie@transformyourwedding.com. Now, don't forget, you can find all of our podcast episodes either in the audio version or YouTube, and you can get all those links at our podcast website, which is transformyourwedding.com. Thank you so much, guys. I will see you next time.
This podcast is brought to you by Rent My Wedding, your one-stop shop for event rentals. Order online and rentals are delivered right to your door. Shipping is free both ways nationwide. Rent lighting, backdrops, photo booths, and more. With the most 5-star reviews in the industry, Rent My Wedding makes rentals easy and affordable. Book your rentals today at www.rentmywedding.com.